Now you'll notice white rhinos not very white in color. In fact, right now they're pretty reddish brown. White is kind of a misnomer. It actually comes from the Afrikaans word weit, meaning wide. Compared to other rhinos, they've got a very large face. And that's not the only thing that makes them a little unusual. And since we're to stop, feel free to stand up. I'm going to talk about them for a second. And it looks like we're having a little bit of roughhousing going on. These girls are really social. Now, as I was saying, a few other things that make them unique. They're living in the grasslands. Most rhinos prefer more forested here. It's going to be beautiful and lush and green, rich soil, lots of water, which means it's really easy for plants to grow. So their job is to go around digging up the earth, looking for roots. In the process, tilling that soil to it, but they seem to think it's pretty tasty. So that wire netting helps to protect the bark from our giraffe. So as you can see, a big part of helping something out and finding ways to protect it is understanding its needs. And that's one of the issues we're facing out in the wild with our giraffe right now. We've actually lost 40% of the giraffe population in just the last 20 years. Which is bad news for those savannas, because giraffe are really the only ones that are tree trimmers out there. And those trees help to fix that. Nobody else out here is going to have the food they want to eat either. And if you don't have animals, like our antelope, well then what are our lions going to eat? There's going to leave some leftovers for those vultures. As I mentioned earlier, it's all a giant network. Now, one way you can help us out, though, is with our giraffe. When you get home, you can become a wildlife researcher by going to wildwatchkenya.org to protect each other from predators. If you want to see them in action, there is an excellent video on YouTube called Battle with Kruger, where they'll take out a pride of lions and a crocodile, barely break a sweat in the process. And as a zoo, we really believe in the power of teamwork too, especially when it comes to critically endangered species like some of my favorites to our right. Every single poacher, the forest our black rhinos call home. There's also just not a lot of that forest left. Habitat loss is going to affect every species you meet today. Whether it's the sleek orange Ugandan cobs licking their tails at us to the left, or the plants surrounding us and our own native hillsides. But there's also a few easy ways to help out with that. When you treating seeds and fruits, which eventually become food, shade, and shelter for the other wildlife living in your area. Because while a black rhino, like Lembe, needs a healthy forest to call home, well, that healthy forest also needs a rhino. Because rhinos in particular are especially good at creating manure that's really rich, which means good nutrients for those plants, and spreading seeds. And look at those cute little baby kudu running down the hillside. Right now, because they're actually supposed to be playing hide-and-go-seek, basically. And it looks like instead we are playing a game of tag. See, they may look pretty good on those legs, but if a lion pops out of the grass, they are at risk. So their job is to find a good hiding spot, sit down, and right at the end of the tours, keep our fingers crossed. And I mentioned that the other animals out here rely on the giraffe because the giraffe keep those trees healthy, which makes for a good savanna. Not the only good reason to buzzy up to giraffe. With their height, there's not much that blocks the giraffe's view, and just like the other animals, that's why, as I mentioned with our greater flamingos, and as you can see with many of the animals, the tree is also an expert at chemical warfare. It can change its flavor, make itself bitter, toxic if you eat too much, and it'll communicate with the other trees in the area to let them know it's time to change your flavor before the giraffe get you too. Another couple of unique animals up to our right. The one that's closest to us that looks a lot like a deer is in fact a deer. However, Barbary red deer are the only deer species native to Africa. Behind them, you'll find another one of my favorites, the lovely white creatures, the long curved horns. These are scimitar horned oryx. And this is an animal that can go its entire life without drinking water. Definitely a useful skill to have if we call the Sahara the hottest, driest place on Earth home. They're going to be digging up the roots of different plants or breaking leaves off succulents like aloe and getting most of their water from that instead. Affect them will affect us too. The plants surrounding us provide oxygen, which is something we're all using.
Тут сам мысль.
They clean our soil and our water. They prevent erosion.
Donc сюда заезжают кормить.
So far, we've only studied about 5% of the plants in the world. Yet, out of that 5%, we have found over 70% of the medications we take. So, the cure for cancer could very easily be in one of the trees our giraffe are dining on. But if there's no longer giraffe out there taking care of those trees, well, it might not be around when we go looking for it. And unfortunately, for much of the wildlife that calls our park home, unless something changes, they don't really have a lot of time left. At the current rate at which we lose rhinos to poachers, 15 years from now, there won't really be rhinos left to protect, unless we slow that poaching down. And as we discussed, news for our giraffe out in the wild, not much better, although luckily for us here at the park, it is pretty good here. The giraffe who is closest to us is my favorite giraffe in the entire world. Her name is Shawnee. She's the prettiest giraffe you will ever meet. And her little cutie pie son, right behind her, just a couple weeks old, trying to make friends with that water buck, is the youngest giraffe in either of our herds right now. He's just under a month old. And that is a pretty special moment you're witnessing right now, because this waterbuck male really does not know what to make of this, because that's his feeder the giraffe are eating out of. He doesn't necessarily want to share, but he also knows not to pick a fight with an animal that's 18 feet tall. Although in the case of that baby giraffe, on the first day he was born, he was already 6 feet tall. So use that to give you a little bit of a sense of scale. He's actually very brave with this waterbuck boy over here. He's trying very hard to look really tough and intimidating as all of our toddler giraffe come over and poke noses with him. Unfortunately, though, we do have to get back up to the station, so give them those last few photos. But good news is there's still so much more park out there for you to explore, and a lot of wildlife to meet. And the best news is, one of the best ways you can help protect the wildlife you came